Assalamualaikum. Ini Sembang Santai Miti, Bicara Asean bersama saya, Naila Fuda. Dan untuk episod kali ini, kita nak mulakan episod dengan satu fun fact. Tahukah anda, tema untuk ASEAN 2025 yang ditetapkan oleh Malaysia sebagai pengerusi ataupun chairman ASEAN untuk tahun ini adalah Inclusivity and Sustainability. And these are terms yang selalu kita dengar, very popular terms, but what do they actually mean? And they can actually mean a lot of things, especially with inclusivity. Kalau kita fikir pasal inclusivity, it can be a lot of things. Maybe ethnic groups, maybe in terms of age. But one aspect of inclusivity that is very important that we want to highlight in this episode is from the aspect of gender. And this is especially important when about half the population of people in ASEAN are women. But oddly enough, when we look at the economy, especially when we look at the female labour force participation rate, kadar penyertaan wanita dalam tenaga kerja sebenarnya dalam 56% je. And when we think of ASEAN juga, we always think of these high-level meetings of these, regional leaders in their fancy suits, and they're mostly men. But the reality is, half the population in this region are women. So, these are the kind of questions and issues, concerns that we want to tackle and we want to discuss in this episode. And I think our guests today are perfect to be able to answer these questions, to help me navigate these kind of issues. And I'm very honored to be with such accomplished women in this episode. Joining me today, we have Puan Mastura Ahmad Mustafa, Deputy Secretary General Trade at Miti. Thank you for joining us. We also have Nurlin Saleh, Managing Partner and Director at Boston Consulting Group or BCG. And from the civil society, we want to hear from Izana Saleh, Co-founder and Global President of Girls for Girls International. Terima kasih. Thank you everyone for joining us today at Miti. How's everyone doing? Yeah, very exciting episode, I think. Something very close to all our hearts. But yeah, I want to go back to this statistic that I mentioned just now. Something quite alarming when I'm talking about, looking at half the population in this region, wanita. Tapi bila kita tengok mereka yang menyertai tenaga kerja ataupun pasaran kerja ni, 56% je. Maybe Puan Mas boleh tolong sikit dengan statistik ni untuk kita faham cabaran dia pada skala ekonomi, pada skala regional ni is such a big issue. Puan Mas, what do we think of this?
Okay, sebenarnya apa yang berlaku di ASEAN ni tak banyak bezanya dengan negara-negara lain.
Yeah.
Sometimes ada yang in ASEAN region, contohnya kat Malaysia, we are much better than some of the developed countries. For example, dari segi wages lah, discriminations of wages. Tetapi still ada cabaran-cabaran, challenges for women, especially in the economic sector. Satu, seperti biasa, is peluang kerjaya lah. We can see that still in certain technical sector, more advanced, high-tech kerjaya, still kebanyakannya, despite the number of women ataupun our girls in universities, because peluang pendidikan dah is almost a non-issue in this region. But then at the end, they will not landed into the right career path that they're supposed to pergilah.
So what happens there? Macam, education semua dah okay. Tapi career-wise, there's a problem. So what happens?
Pada pandangan saya lah, ASEAN ni, we still have this certain culture and budaya that will seems to sort of for certain category of work, they will feel that even the employer, they tend to discriminate in employing certain gender into their company. But these are the things that we need to break through lah. Yang kita cuba pastikan bahawa women in ASEAN should be treated, given the same opportunity as their men's colleague lah kan. Jadi itu dari segi peluang kerjaya. Number 2 is dari segi modal untuk berniaga lah. Sometimes it's not because they do not have, there is no facility bila Miti buat compilation of macam financing ke apa, benda tu wujud sometimes lebih kepada warga komuniti wanita, komuniti perniagaan wanita, tapi information tu tak sampai kepada golongan wanita. Kadang kita pun tahu kebanyakan wanita yang terlibat dalam bisnes ni, dia terlibat dalam SMEs ataupun produk-produk kampung, produk dia yang dibuat daripada rumah, dihasilkan daripada rumah. So they are not aware that there are a loan facility for them.
Banyak sebenarnya bantuan.
Ada all the support that the government can do to expand their business and so on.
Tapi
so,
tak accessible lagi.
And lastly, I think the challenge is the systemic challenge lah. The nature of wanita. Despite kita kata ASEAN region ni kebanyakannya the young generation dalam ASEAN, tapi we still have elderly. So selalunya kalau nak jaga orang tua ni, siapa yang orang akan nampak kan?
Responsibility
mesti anak perempuan. Jadi most of us mungkin still rasa that responsibility tu lebih daripada kaum lelaki. Jadi kita akan banyak yang decided to sacrifice their career just to take care of their parents. And
but all these challenges kan, kalau kita bayangkan kita buat podcast ni 10 years ago, atau mungkin 10 years ago belum ada podcast lagi lah kan, very new. But 10 years ago, I think Nurlin, I'm sure you've done many interviews on these topics. And I'm sure you're thinking when you're invited to this show, here we go again. We're talking about the same stuff, kan? But in the context of ASEAN, it's regional now, maybe it's a bit different. But it seems to be like we're running around the same issue. So if we were to go back 10 years ago, not to say 10 years ago you were we're not talking about age here, okay, we were all in university 10 years ago, of course. Tapi 10 years ago, would you say the conversation was the same?
It's a great question. I think that yes, the similar conversation has been happening across the last decade or so, but we also have to realize the fact that there has been a lot of progress that has been made, right? Whether it's in ASEAN, whether it's in Malaysia, there was an initiative to push for representation of females on boards, right? That's something that we were able to achieve within the last couple of years. So there has been a lot of progress that has been made. I think there's a lot of awareness that has come into play, but however, there is a lot more that needs to be done, right? As Puan Mastura had mentioned, and you had also highlighted, women represents a large part of the population of ASEAN, right? And for ASEAN as a community to grow and develop, we need to have it to increase productivity of our labor force, right? That's the one big unlock that we need to put into place. To enable that, to do that, you have to rely on this population of bringing women into the workforce. And we've done a great job from an educational standpoint. Actually, a lot of women are the ones who actually graduate most effectively. But we lose those women as they progress within their careers, because the reality is, as Puan Mastura had mentioned, the familial pressures are there, the responsibilities that are put into place. And we were just discussing about the fact that to be a successful career woman, you have to be really good at juggling 50 million things, right? Because you need to juggle your career, you need to juggle your bosses, your subordinates, your household, your kids, your parents, so many different things.
But a man should have to juggle everything too.
Oh my God, I would love to say yes. I would love to say yes, but perhaps there is the point that, and this might be a contentious point that some of my male colleagues may disagree with, is that the reality is women multitask much better than men, right? And so the burden falls on women to be able to handle a lot of these different things. Not saying that men haven't improved. Men have. They have improved over the last...
All the men in here are very quiet.
Yeah, they have. But women are just a lot better at it. But when it becomes a little bit too much for women as they progress within their careers, the first thing they will sacrifice is the jobs and the careers that they put in place. Because your focus then is on priorities, on your family and your parents and your kids. And as far as our customs in ASEAN are, we are not a culture that basically leaves the responsibility of family and parents to be outsourced.
We're not
or-
individualistic.
We're not in that nature, right? Maybe there has been slight shifts and moves in that direction, but in general, the home and family perspective is that responsibility falls on the children to be able to look after their parents and so on and so forth. So when it's ingrained in our culture, as Puan Mas had talked about, it's a difficult shift to make. What we are asking for is for women to be able to juggle and take on more and handle those responsibilities in a more efficient and effective manner. And how do we support them to be able to do that?
Yeah, but going to that point about being good at multitasking, I mean, that's a great point, but just to be a devil's advocate for the sake of it, right? And being honest as well, I'm not that good at multitasking, to be honest, you know? Like, I have to rack my brain, nak fikir, nak masak, nak kerja, nak ni. It's not hard. And maybe for some people, it's not naturally, a natural instinct. Maybe it's built in. Maybe it's systemically built in and entrenched for us to have to think and juggle everything. Because imagine all these burdens, but it was split. Maybe not 50-50, but relatively equally between, male and female partners. Then maybe we wouldn't have to multitask all these things, right? But that's just me. Maybe, there's just a personal problem. I need to fix that. But yeah, going to that point about, talking about the same issues that women face, there has been progress. And Izana, you work in this field. You look at it, I think, from a first-hand perspective, this kind of progress or, slow progress, I would say. Or what can you say about the past decade? Regionally, perhaps, like what has the progress been like and what are the challenges that remain?
Sure. Thank you so much, firstly, for having me. I like how you positioned that question because as co-founder of a not-for-profit that deals exactly in this space, women and girls empowerment, specifically to enter leadership spaces. So we're really about the woman herself and progressing in her career. And we've been running globally for about 8 years now, so almost a decade. And I can tell you that from the first cohort that we handled to the girls that we're dealing with today, they're a whole different breed. So when we started, we have a set module that we sort of ensure we train or mentor the young girls in, building trust with yourself that you can fit into leadership, courageous leadership, arts of negotiation, arts of communication, etc. Today, and why I bring up the arts of negotiation, because at that time, data showed that 70% of women don't negotiate. Kalau HR datang, dia bagi, okay, this is your salary. Like, terima kasih, Today, the girls are ready with their homework. No, this is what I'm worth. Okay, I have 3 other options. So the conversation, the awareness that Nurlin spoke about is really prevalent. So the species you're dealing with today is very different. A lot more alpha women out there because, as Puan Mastura mentioned, we are majority of your tertiary education punya graduates. We're about 73%.
Yeah.
Nurlin mentioned about the leaky bucket issue. It doesn't, we don't see this going up to the top of the ladder because of the culture, the caretaking issues. But what I'm seeing is that we're dealing with a whole different breed of women today. They are ready to, in their language, come out and slay, and they're ready for that top position. They see themselves as the CEO. They see themselves as equal partners. So then how do we as a government, a country, a nation, the region, how do we support this new breed of next generation leaders, right? So there's 2 parts here to look at. One is systemic and one is human, the person, she herself, right? The systemic issues would be, things that Puan Mastura will be dealing with, managing policies that can cater to the next generation. How do we talk about care economy in a way that caters to women who are busier in the workplace, but also men who are a bit more hands-on? We were just chatting about this earlier. Our parents' generation and our generation, the men are actually a little bit different. You can see a bit more hands-onness, if that's even the word.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe the next generation, there's a lot more inclination to share the caretaking burden. So how do policies actually cater to this next generation. And then the next bit is about the person themselves, right? How do we make sure that they are super skilled in a way where we can meet the economic demands, the labor workforce? We're at 56% now. Our target is at 60% for 2030. How do we make sure that it's not because of the policies yang hanya untuk wanita, but really because of the merit, their strengths, their capabilities? Having said all of that, I think that we're doing great in building the ecosystem. It does take time.
Yeah.
So kita kena bagi masa sedikit so we can see the progress happen. We are seeing more women on boards. We are seeing more women enter the labor workforce. There are a lot of grants out there, but it takes time to trickle down to everyone. It takes time to learn the AI skills, the business skills, the risk-taking skills to start a business and stay with it, right? I mean, all these things take time. We are seeing progress.
Yeah, Izana, I like what you said about that, hands-onness, and something that's a bit due. I think it's 2025. I mean, come on, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe we can hear personally as well. Like, is this something that you see, if it's okay to share, something in your own home, something in your own lives? Like, has there been these challenges still, or has there been a bit of progress? Nordin, if you can start.
I'm happy. I mean, to share that. I mean,
Not to chime into your household issues.
I'll let you into my household, don't worry. So my husband and I, we both have very, very demanding jobs, right? Like, I head our office here in BCG in Malaysia, and my husband runs like a VC fund, but also sits on multiple different boards and so on and so forth. So we're super busy. And what I was saying to Izana earlier was, I think the generations in the past have been very sort of hands-off, a little bit more hands-off with the kids. It's like, okay, that's the responsibility of the ma, they will handle things. But now I see a bit more of a balance. So in my own home with my husband, a couple of weeks ago, I was telling Izana again, I fell sick. I caught this like gastro bug, which was going around with my kids, and I thought I had escaped it, but obviously that didn't happen. But one of my kids fell pretty ill, and she went into hospital. And at that time, unfortunately, I was super busy with meetings the whole day, so I couldn't be in hospital with her. And so at that time, I had to say to my husband, please, can you be there? Like, I really cannot juggle this today. Can you handle this? You take day shift, I take night shift, right? Okay. And he stepped up, and he was just like, sure, I'll move my meetings, I'll be there, so on and so forth. And he stepped up to be able to juggle that with me, right? And that's the type of, I think, support that you need from a partnership to really make it effective for a woman to be successful in her job. Not saying that I'm super successful, but I'm saying that
we can all agree.
But you are. you need to balance. You need that balance and support, from your partner, but also from your extended family to be able to make that effective. And as Izana was saying, like I genuinely see that. It was a learning for him, I would say. Like the first few years when we first started having kids, it was like I had to step up and say, hey, hello, I need you here, right? And, it was a realization for him. But now that balance is there. So for a lot of women, I would say actively encourage to have those open communications with your partner so that you can adopt a model that can work for both of you, right? So that both of you can be equally as successful.
I mean, it takes a village, right?
It does.
And
It
I
really
guess
does.
it's a nice call out to women, but it would be nice for men to just step up without us having to have that conversation in the first place.
Okay,
That's
so
that's an
ideal.
ideal world.
That's ideal.
A girl
but
can dream.
But the one thing that I've learned from men, and I don't know if anyone else wants to share, but the one thing that I've learned from men is, and my husband always says this, is like, if you don't tell me, I don't know. They're not the most intuitive. So
That's a nice way of saying it.
So you have to explicitly say to them, then they're like, oh, I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It needs to be like A, B, C.
Yes.
So I'm not married, but I can share some observations.
Okay.
I don't have personal insights in that sense, but I have a lot of male cousins, right? All married with kids and all of that. And I must say that they're very hands-on dads and husbands. So they can travel, juggle all the anak, baby while running work between here and Indonesia. Think of a specific cousin in mind. And, lampin anak, makanan anak, semua. I'm seeing our generation, they're very hands-on. Precisely because they have wives like Nurlin who are very successful leaders of their organization. So they do recognize that they need to step up plus the fact that actually getting support at home, macam helper ke apa, is a very expensive ordeal.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to find trusted people or just people to help in general. So the perfect storm has resulted in both parties stepping up. Having said that, I think that is an like a very urban
minority.
minority. It is happening, like we said earlier, tapi it's very niche lah. It's not yet the norm in our nation or the region.
You've got very good cousins.
I must say. I mean,
even
if you guys
who
are
are
watching,
single, you should hook them up. Because sounds like perfect
what's
candidates.
interesting is, if I may bring it back to the women, the mothers who raise these children. These are macam they are anak from single women who had to be both the mother and the father. You know, so they raised with a very firm hand, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, right? And they raised with the values that we want to see.
Yeah. What I think of when you say about, managing the household and juggling all these things, I'm reminded of, juggling or managing a company even, and you are in that perfect position, Nordin, I think, of being in those two positions. Is it, do you think it's the same, like managing a company and managing a household? Like, what are the kind of similarities, or what are the skills, the transferable skills? I'm using your corporate lingo.
I'm just trying to think about this. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes, in the sense that I do feel like I play a bit of a motherly role across both my company as well as at home, to ensure that, things are like smooth sailing, that everyone is happy, that everyone is healthy, that things are progressing well and everyone's needs are taken into consideration. Yes, in that sense, I feel those skill sets matter. And to be honest, actually, I do also think that's why I was chosen to be the head of PCG in Malaysia, because the view was that, people needed that more sort of maternal touch, I suppose, and that care. And so that skill set was probably something that was potentially why I had been chosen for that role. But so in that sense, it makes it easier for me to be able to transfer both skills across both. But as I said, that multitasking skill set is also important lah, because my brain has to shift from like what was it, yesterday or the day before, I was just like, some guys were coming in to talk to me in my meeting room, and I was just like, wait 1 second, I need to order makanan from Grab for sahur for my kids. Sekejap, tunggu sekejap. And then I was just like, oh no, my kids, I forgot to pick one up. Okay, let's do this meeting quickly. I need to go pick up my kids. So
need to like compartmentalize, right?
Yeah, effectively, right?
Yeah.
And not just compartmentalize, but my brain has to switch from this to that, you know? And I am perpetually on my phone. You'll see that I'm perpetually on my phone. The reason why I'm on my phone is I'm either answering some question from, one of my employees or some of my team members, or I'm answering questions from my helpers or from my kids or from, you just have to be able to be on the go and manage that effectively.
That's not easy.
I know, but sounds to me like you run a tight ship both sides, which is amazing.
Props to you.
Just to share my experience. I think I'm one of the lucky one, and my husband is really a rare breed.
Wow.
So working in Miti is not easy.
Okay.
Working in government, you all see the role.
Especially in
I can imagine,
I spend more time outside the house rather than in the house, especially during my early days in Miti, when there is no, the technology, the ICT, frequent. We have to prepare a very thick brief every time it is a thing. And I will stay in the office until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning just to compile the brief. But my husband is very understanding. I was away 2 weeks from the house, traveling for work. Without me, he took care of the two. At that time I have 2 small kids. One 1 year old, the other one is 3 years old.
Wow.
Without me. So he managed to do that until now. But again, the pressure is more on the extended family.
Yeah.
When we went back to, okay, this one macam tak sedap je cerita kan. Yelah, but the old generation, he cannot, my mother-in-law tak boleh nampak anak dia, anak lelaki dia tak lampin anak.
Yes, it's a generational.
Kalau anak nangis, buatkan susu. So every time if we went back to the kampung, I will straight away tell him, you don't have to let me take over.
Dah senyap, jangan.
But
Super mom is here.
throughout the marriage, actually, he done sometimes more than 50%.
Amazing.
Household tasks. But I guess the new generation, for me, I am now a mother-in-law. I mean, automatically we will change the way we look at our menantu. Even though we hear that my son loves to cook.
Okay.
So sometimes when I call him, buka puasa apa malam ni? Pami baru lepas goreng nasi. Tapi I tak ada dalam hati kata, kenapa bukan wife dia yang masak? That is the things that we need
Mindset
to,
shift.
the mindset, even among the women. Sebenarnya, kita yang also contribute to the
Stigma, right?
The stigma tu. The same goes to the office work lah. Apart from the motherly things, I think we are a good manager because we are more creative in handling our subordinates. Because we have children with different kind of character, and once you know how to manage them, it's so easy for you to manage your subordinate. Because we know how to handle this kind of person, you will come up with a creative solution. How to handle.
That's right. No, that's a great story. Dulu it used to be the opposite kan. The stereotype would be that, woman can't run a business, woman can't run a country. I mean, now can men run the country? Because we are seeing a few problems out there, but let's not go there. But no, it's good to hear this mindset shift, right? And especially when these maternal instincts, these natural instincts that come to a woman actually come in handy and actually membantu when it comes to managing a corporate.
It really does. But I also just want to touch upon one thing that Puan Mas had talked about is, for a successful female, everyone always says behind a successful man is a strong woman, right? It goes the other way also. Behind a successful woman also, it helps to have the support of a partner who understands what your ambitions and what you want and what you need and supports you to enable that. That is really important. And I mean, if that balance doesn't happen, it's really challenging for women because of all the external pressures that you face.
But again, slightly personal, and I hope it's okay, but climbing up the corporate ladder, did you have to face that, that $1 billion question, that dilemma of this or that? Or did it just come naturally? Is it like career, family? Or do I put myself first? Or how do you do it all?
I think that dilemma I face like every day. It's like, I mean, every day.
Is this the mom guilt?
It's a mom guilt, but I think it's like a female thing as well. In your head, you're always thinking, am I making the right choices? Am I prioritizing the right things? Am I balancing the right things, right? And as you have kids, and I have 4, right? They're all like 10, 8, 6, 4 years old. And so they're at that stage where they're going through quite a lot. And I'm also at the stage in my career where things are super, super busy, right? And so every day I then question, should I be doing this? Should I be taking a step back?
You still ask yourself those questions?
Every day.
Okay.
Pagi dah semalam pun. It's like, every day you ask these questions. Because, as I said, like, certain things happen. At some point, work is going well or whatever, and you're like, yes, I want to be this person and that person. And then the next day, your child falls sick and is in hospital, and you're like, I need to drop everything and go off to hospital. Or, my husband runs marathons, and he's got it in his head that he wants to run a marathon next month in the US, and he's training through Ramadan, right? And I'm like, can I go? Can I not go, right? Because I have work and I've got kids, but I also have a responsibility as a wife, right? And I'm worried about his health. So I'm like, okay, I need to make the sacrifice and I need to go with him to be a good wife, right? So every day you're questioning. Every day you're like, am I making the right choices? But my advice to women has always been take one day at a time.
Yeah.
Don't make rash decisions, right? Take one day at a time, figure it out. If during a duration of time it doesn't quite work out, then reassess your priorities, but openly communicate it and discuss and see what can be done to make it work, right? I think a lot of people make rash decisions and then potentially live to regret it later.
I mean, it's so comforting to hear that someone in your position still faces these questions and struggle with them because, you know, we all do, I think, right? Having to make that decision. But it's really about taking it slow, taking one step at a time. And having that community really just helps lift that burden. It really takes a village, kan? It's not just us.
I think having kids is actually bagus because at the end of the day, when you go back to your house, dekat malam, your child come to you and hug you and say, I love you, mom.
Yes.
That will automatically make everything okay.
Yes. With the
all your guilt, all your feeling that you're not a good mother, assumption.
Exactly.
Erase everything.
Yeah. I also have a role model that was previously the head of my company in Malaysia, and she had 5 kids. So, you know, I had a great role model to learn from.
I have 5.
Okay, wow. Okay, here you go.
Role model. There you go. And she always said to me, what was really nice for her was when she came back from work one day and she was thinking of quitting, giving up, her child said to her, like, actually, I like it that you work and you go to work and you are doing so well because that gives me something to achieve towards, right? So it's a different perspective that you're like, yeah, actually, you know?
Actually, it's interesting. I come from a family where the women work, where I did not have any role models in my life that were stay-at-home moms or anything like that. And I remember in recent times, my mom took a short sabbatical. And as a daughter who always saw this amazing career woman who defied all odds, I asked her to go back to work. I said, please don't stay at home because number one, when you talk to me about you pergi pasar and all this, I don't know who I'm talking to. And two, I want back my old mom who's doing all of these things. And exactly that. How you are as a mother is exactly how you walk and talk as a mother is exactly what you're building the next generation. So today I love the idea of career and my work and everything because I grew up seeing a career woman. And I think then that ties into all the policy stuff we were talking about earlier. That's how you really shift the culture, right?
Yeah. I think for me, I guess you're right about the progress because I think seeing women in leadership has been quite normalized, you know, women like yourselves. Maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, it was something rare, but now it's something that's so normalized that now for me, it's the opposite. When I see someone who opts to become, you know, a full-time housewife or a mother, I mean, everyone's a full-time mother, but like, you know, to do that fully, for me, that's my role model now. Because how do you do that, you know? How do you do 5 and 4? Like, that's insane to me.
And run amazing, you know, programs and businesses.
Yeah, and do all that at the same time. But again, you know, to tie into, you know, these policies and these initiatives that we're talking about, right? I mean, these help to, I guess, reflect the kind of challenges, the kind of issues that women do face on a daily basis, juggling and struggling these existential questions of like, oh, am I doing this right? What should I do? But, you know, we want to hear about going back to this theme of inclusivity and what can be done on a more, you know, higher level to address these questions. Progress is happening, but maybe some of us might want to see it move a bit quickly. It does take time, but Puan Mas, maybe it will be interesting to hear from your perspective, macam bila kita tengok from policy making perspective. It does take time, right?
Yeah.
For it to actually trickle down to, you know, women like me and many others. Policy-policy yang macam ASEAN cuba nak buat, all these ASEAN countries and our country ourselves, Miti, you know, all these policies need to be embedded. All these macam inclusive policies that take women into account. So macam mana kita nak tengok benda tu dia trickle down and how actually is the process?
Okay. One of apa yang kita nak deliver tahun ni ialah ASEAN Community Vision 2045. Okay. Kalau kita lihat in the drafting stage of this ACV, first the high-level task force of the post-2025 ASEAN Vision, the co-chair is a lady from Philippines. Then trickle down on the Tonggak economy, the working group that are actually drafting the plan strategic 2026-2030 for AEC. Also, the chair is a lady from Miti, Dr. Sukumari. And Siom is actually the who were going to finalize everything before bring it to the minister. I'm the chair of the Siom.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm happy to tell you 7 out of 10 Siom leaders from 10 ASEAN countries are ladies.
We're in good hands.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's impossible that the whole vision of ASEAN will not take into consideration of women. But saying that, the strategic measures or whatever action plans yang kita masuk dalam tu are all gender neutral. What we need to do is actually to go down, reach out to the women, for them to understand what are the things in ACV that will benefit them. That thing must that is the efforts that government need to do, the outreach to make sure everybody knows, and all the, because ultimately what we do dalam Tonggak ekonomi ni untuk economic growth, development of the country. So the prosperity of the country ataupun whatever economic growth should be enjoyed by everybody, including the women. Jadi it's not really the policy, but how you're going to implement it and how you explain to the general public on how this policy will benefit them.
I mean, that's great to hear. And we're excited to see what comes next. I think we're in good hands. Puan Mas, I mean, if you're sharing it and, there's 7 other ladies, I'm not too worried.
I remember one quotation, I can't remember, is it from Facebook COO, saying that in future, there is no woman leader, but leaders.
Just lead.
Yes.
Yes.
We shouldn't relatekan that leader as a woman or a man.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're moving to a greater future for sure, when we're seeing more women in leadership, and perhaps to a point where we don't see it in that lens anymore. That's the ideal that we want to work towards. But great stuff. Thanks so much for sharing all your stories. It's been a great session, I think. Thank you so much, Puan Mastura, Nurlin, Izana, for being here and for sharing. And I think lots of great stuff to look forward to in ASEAN. Banyak inisiatif yang kita boleh lihat untuk tahun ini dan juga sehingga 2045 visi tu. Mungkin 2045 kita akan duduk dengan Puan Mas. Mungkin dah ada cucu. Kita akan tengok sejauh mana kita dah sampai. 2045, tak lama dah tu. Thank you so much guys for joining us, and thank you for watching. Kita akan jumpa lagi dalam episod seterusnya.